My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality-Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life. Dan, you've been through the whole college planning situation with your kids. I am currently saving for college, and we have clients that come in all the time wanting to know how much they should be saving. And sometimes they feel a pull because they may not want to necessarily contribute to college. So, what are your thoughts about the whole process?
Well, so first off, when we talk about planning, it's always based on quality of life. And when we talk about college planning, it's really important to understand that people have really varied ideas on what makes the most sense. People talk a lot about, I want to make sure my kids have skin in the game. Other people are like, well, I took care of it myself and my parents didn't help me. And then other people look at it and say, it's really high priority for me to save and invest for college. And so for us, we felt like that was something we wanted to do for our kids. And we started investing in 529 college savings accounts when they were very young, took advantage of that process over a long period of time, and ultimately found ourselves in a position where, because our kids went to public universities and used some of the credits that they had from high school, they were graduating in 3 years. We actually had enough in our 529s to pay for everything with their college. Now, how much do they appreciate that with not having student loans and some of the other things that people deal with? I'm not entirely sure.
Right. It's still pretty new for you. So, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know that at this time. I think while you were talking, you gave two tips on things people can do right now if they are preparing for college for their child. One, you said that your children took college credits while in high school. Is that something you would recommend people look out for?
Well, all of the kids are going to be different, but we sent our kids to a charter school, and part of the focus on that charter school was college credits. And they were able to get college credits while on campus in high school. So they didn't have to go and do PSEO or something where they were off campus and not really getting that high school experience. So we felt good about that. And in their situation, they got a lot of credits for college. Now, for other people, if you can get some of those basics out of the way and basically get it for free in high school, it puts you at a huge advantage.
That's so interesting to know. I know our school district offers college credits where you do need to go off campus through the community college. I wonder how easily those types of credits transfer. Did your children have any issues with any credits transferring?
So my oldest ended up going to the University of Wisconsin. My younger daughter's currently at the University of South Carolina. They both had different protocols in place for how those credits would transfer. Now, if it was Minnesota, there was specifically a Minnesota protocol where those credits would have transferred very easily at any of the public universities in Minnesota. But because they both went out of state, Wisconsin had a little bit more like rigid aspect of how they transferred, but they both got enough credits to where they could easily knock a year off.
Okay.
And the way I would look at it, even if you have more credits than that, you don't really want your experience of college to be, hey, I showed up and I'm a junior in college, even though I'm a freshman and I don't really know anybody and I have all of this getting used to the idea of being at school. You want to make sure that they're focused on their major, they're focused on how that whole experience is going to work for them. So for our kids, it really knocked off, even though they had enough credits to technically knock off 2 years, it really knocked off 1 year. But think of how valuable that is. If you're talking about even a public university at Wisconsin was about $30,000 a year, you knock off 1 year using those high school credits, it's $30,000. $1,000.
That is a huge saving. That definitely makes a significant impact. I will definitely consider that when my children are in high school. Right now, my kids are in elementary school. I have one getting ready to go to middle school. So that's a little bit down the line, but that is something that will be top of mind for me when that time comes. Another thing you mentioned was the 529. I know I opened up 529s for my children when they were babies. I've been saving ever since. So tell me about that experience. Was it pretty simple to use when it was time to go and pay for college?
So we get that question a lot. Like, there's this idea I'm going to save money, but then how practical, useful is this, and how easily does it translate? So there's two different ways that people can take money out of a 529. Number one is I could pay the expenses, and then I can reimburse myself for those expenses. And that could be anything that's a qualified educational expense. Tuition, room and board, could be any number of different things. The second thing is I can have money sent directly to the university. And that's actually what I ended up doing for most of our distributions. Because if you have money go directly from the 529 directly to the university, nobody's ever going to question whether that was a qualified educational expense. So I don't really need to keep track of that money if I ever were to get audited on how I used my 529. Now, we did, when my oldest went off campus, paid rent, had a bunch of different expenses that weren't necessarily paid to the school. Then we did take a reimbursement directly to ourselves. I keep track of those expenses. I'll have receipts, and I just make sure I keep that in a file folder for any time down the road if somebody ever asks questions about it. But it was very simple and convenient to get money out of our 529s and paying for tuition, room and board, and those different costs.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear I won't have to face challenge. Well, hopefully I won't have to face any challenges with at least taking distributions from the 529s when the time comes.
Which 529 did you end up using?
I use Maryland's. At the time, I wasn't aware of the benefits of some of the other plans, but it's going well right now. Maryland uses T. Rowe Price to manage their portfolio.
And we used Virginia, which is American funds, and it's because the state of Minnesota doesn't have a particularly compelling 529 compared to a lot of the other states that offer plans. And our tax benefits that we get in our state apply equally whether we're using another state plan or Minnesota's plan. And every state is different in that regard. Do you get tax benefits through
Yes,
Maryland?
we do get tax benefits on our state returns, on our state taxes. So yes.
Okay.
Another question that I do have is college selection. I think I know what you're going to say because I know your emphasis on quality of life. But when it comes to college selection, should cost be a factor in looking at colleges, or should you just go with the college that you just want to go to because you think that's what you want to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's not an easy question because when we think about that entire experience, you obviously have to approach it from what you're trying to accomplish. And so my younger daughter had ideas about what her major was going to be. There weren't that many colleges and universities close to us that had that type of a major. And so we were looking at places in California. We were looking down south in South Carolina, Florida, some of those places. And, as far as comparing public versus private and some of those costs, well, she's not going to get more money by going to a private school than she is by going to a public school. And my kids are pretty practical. So they looked at that and said, well, why would I spend $50,000, $60,000 instead of $25,000, $30,000? And she ended up getting a scholarship to the University of South Carolina that made it the equivalent of in-state. So that was a big difference.
Great.
But as far as my advice to people, it really depends on your major and what you're trying to accomplish. One of the best examples I can give you is I used to be a professional engineer. I went to school for my engineering at North Dakota State. And when I took my first job, there was someone there that was just starting out. And her dad was actually a professor in the University of Minnesota system. And she could have gone to just about any Minnesota school for basically free under her dad's, being a professor. Instead, she went to Notre Dame. And she went to Notre Dame because she thought it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And she went there for engineering, which Notre Dame is not exactly like known as being some sort of special engineering school. And she was spending a ton of money, taking on a bunch of loans. And you look at that and you go, okay, realistically, maybe she's going to have a good experience there. But she did it probably more because it was cool, rather and kind of how she imagined that experience, rather than thinking in terms of my goal is to get out of school with a degree, be able to find a job, be able to make competitive compensation, which she would have been able to do at any number of Minnesota schools.
Right.
So there are practical ramifications that we want to definitely consider.
That is such good advice. And I think that takes the weight off of some people on deciding which college I should choose, whether I should go based on money or whether I should go based on this stream. I think you gave practical advice that will be helpful for someone. One thing, I attended a webinar recently, and it was all about college. And my son informed me that he wants to go to UConn, which is down the line. But UConn's tuition has gone up over 1,000% since 1990.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I think their tuition went up the highest out of the big name schools. What do you say to that parent who just sees that type of sticker price? They see this huge sticker price and just think it's unachievable, so I'm just not going to do anything. What would you say to them?
The first thing is you need to have a plan in place with some action steps of how you want to approach it. And it's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. Doing something is almost always better than doing nothing. So that sticker shock, you want to have a conversation with your kids. You want to make sure they understand. What does that actually mean? I mean, would your son end up with a whole bunch of student loans, even though you're helping along the way? And what does that mean to your son as compared to, maybe your other son and what that would look like? So I think it's important to have conversations, doing something, getting a 529 started, putting money away in some way. It's just definitely better, because most people look at the cost of college and say, well, how am I supposed to pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year? I can't afford to do that. It doesn't matter if you can afford to pay the whole cost. Something is definitely going to be better than nothing.
I totally agree. I totally think that you should have a plan in place. Have these conversations early. I'm speaking with my kids even right now about college and what that looks like and what it entails. And I think just having conversations, setting appropriate expectations as well, it makes a difference. I think it makes a difference for the parents and for the students as well.
Do you think it creates any sense of like how do they receive that conversation? Is there any anxiety or anything where they feel that, or are they too young yet for that to be that way?
I don't think they feel any anxiety. I think there's a lot of curiosity there. They do ask a lot of questions, even at this young age. I'm surprised by some of the questions that they ask. So they're very curious. I think that they have an understanding of expectations we have for them and expectations that they have of themselves as well. I'm not someone who necessarily believes everyone needs to go to college to be successful in life. And I've communicated that to them as well. So I don't want them to feel the pressure like I have to go to college. But I informed them that some careers you have to go to college for. If you want to be an engineer, you have to go to college to become an engineer. So they have that awareness as well. Right now, our focus is on making sure they're doing the best they can in school right now, because that makes an impact on their college career later on down the line, and it influences scholarships. Even though during that webinar, the lady said you can't smart your way into school anymore. So she said there are a lot of highly qualified applicants, and just smarting your way into school isn't necessarily the case anymore. But I just want them to be aware of, we may not be able to contribute everything to your college. We've had that conversation as well. But here are some things that you can do when that time comes. And for right now, your focus needs to be on doing the best you can where you're at. So, well, this was a very great conversation. Some takeaways that we can offer to our audience. Contribute to a 529 if you can, if you do have that expectation and desire to contribute to college. Not everyone's situation is going to be the same. So maybe you're a person where you want your kids to have all the skin in the game. That is completely fine. The decision is between you and your children. So don't feel pressured or feel bad if your situation looks different than someone else's. Look out for alternative options such as getting credits while your student is in high school that can be applied to college, that can help to defray the cost of college. And have a plan. Start thinking of what you can do now so that when the time approaches, you have a path forward. Anything else you want to add, Dan?
Well, I just think it's great that we were able to be here together, because normally these conversations, Leah's in Maryland, I'm in Minnesota. We're currently at a group retreat in Hastings, Minnesota, and we had the opportunity to sit down together and talk rather than doing it over Zoom.
Yes, this was wonderful, and we are enjoying ourselves. Well, thank you so much. Once again, we do want to remind you of our Quality of Life Nurse Award. If you know a nurse who is making an impact among other nurses with their patients, if they're improving the quality of life of people in their neighborhood, nominate that nurse today for the Quality of Life Nurse Award. We've already given out some awards, and we plan to continue to give out some more awards. So those will be announced on the first Thursday of each and every month for the rest of the year. We announce those at 12 p.m. Central, right here on the Quality of Life Planning channel. So stay tuned, and don't forget to nominate a nurse who is improving the quality of life of others. Until next time, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Leah.